Welcome to Drive Chat video number 36. This, as you are aware, is a series of interviews that we use to interview prominent people, leaders and experts in their field. And the person that we have with us today, speaking on something that's going to be covered in our Women with Drive event that takes place on the 12th of August in Women's Month. And the person that we're chatting today is Niki Seberini. She's classified as being a well-being practitioner, a speaker, and talk show host. So without further ado, Niki, please do join us and let's just share a few thoughts from your side. Hi, Niki.
Hi, Eugene. Thank you so much. And thanks for the invitation. Lovely to be here.
Well, you know what's nice about chatting with folks like you? I kind of feel like I'm being looked at through a psychologist's eyes. So in the process, you can share any observations you like. But as you know...
Is that a good or a bad thing, Eugene?
I will share with you, a psychologist friend of mine said, if she's at an event and she wants to speak with people, she won't tell them what she does. But if she wants to be on her own, she tells them she's a psychologist. And guess what? People avoid her. So I trust that's not going to be the case with you. You are a keynote speaker at our Women with Drive. And I must just give the audience a brief background on it. I was watching Real Health, correct? That's the show that you were on. And I thought, wow, this woman talks the language that we understand about behavioral change. So that's what set me off on the path of wanting to talk to you. And I'm sure that as we discuss now, some insights you're going to give us, but the bulk of what we do is going to be covered in the Women with Drive event on the 12th of August. So let's start off with, how would you feel, or how can you define that the barriers that we have at a mental level and our beliefs that we've probably nurtured over years, how does this hold some people back?
Well, Eugene, our belief system is really everything. It's the foundation of everything. It's the foundation of our mindset, how we show up in the world, how we see the world, how we interact with people. It all boils down to this belief system that we have. And as you've alluded to, the belief system that is created from a very young age. And so very often we go into our adult years with that belief system that drives how we see the world. So when we want to look at long-term change and we want to really show up in a different way, it's always an invitation to go back to the belief systems. It's not always easy to go back to those belief systems because we don't always identify, in fact, what they are, but they certainly affect how we show up. So when you look at it from a neuroscience point of view, so you've got these bundle of nerves called the reticular activating system that sit at the brain.
Big words, Big words.
Yeah. But it's always nice. It's always nice to bring in the neuroscience because you then get to see how the brain is working and why a belief system would impact the way you show up and the way you see and interact with the world the way it does. So this reticular activating system, these bundle of nerves, they help us regulate while we're awake. But they're also a filtering system. So they filter all of the sensory information coming into the brain. Now, understand the brain is this magnificent organ that uses a tremendous amount of energy. So the brain's always looking for ways of conserving that energy. Okay. And certainly processing all of this information coming in, the brain can only process a certain amount. So Eugene, you know that during a day, you probably have hundreds of emails coming in and many, many people trying to get hold of you. You can't possibly respond to everybody. What you'd like to do is respond to the people that are relevant, right? And so maybe you have a PA who decides who can come through, who you can speak to, whose messages you'll respond to. And that's what the reticular activating system does. It's kind of like our inner PA. It decides what information is important for the brain and what information is not important because there's so much information. Okay. And then where is the importance? What we believe. What we think is.
Okay. Now, this sounds very complex, and part of it is. I'm not undermining. But in effecting a change, does it require massive changes all at once? How does a person process this?
Very good question, because that's very often why people get stopped in their tracks when it comes to change. Change is difficult. Change is uncomfortable. The nervous system doesn't like change. We fear change. Even when it's good change, we don't like it. So we say break it down. You see, when you break everything down to small little steps, then you can achieve it. You almost want to make those small little steps a new habit. So change can happen, but we should really break it down in order to make that new change something that we do unconsciously as a habit.
Can I pick up on one of the analogies you used when I saw you? And it's one that we use on occasion, but not in the same context. Creating those new neural pathways. You used the example of a path in a field. Don't you just want to share that with us, please?
Absolutely. So understand that there's this term, neurons that fire together, wire together. So when we do, again, it goes back to the brain using all of this energy and the brain wanting to automate a whole lot of things. So when you go back to the first time, for example, as a child, you learned to use a knife and a fork. In the beginning, you didn't know how to use a knife and a fork, but over time, after making a lot of mistakes, it became a habit. So the neurons that were used to help think about how to use the motor skills, all of a sudden they started to become wired together. Over time using it, they get wired together. And when you have this neural pathway, it's like creating this beautiful pathway. It's almost like, it can almost become like a highway. And so you don't have to think about it. It's automated. It becomes part of the subconscious. It is a habit that we can use. The brain doesn't need to use a lot of energy. So when you want to start changing the way you do something or introducing a new habit, understand that you've got two neurons or a few neurons that are going to be firing together, and it's an overgrown, long, grassy path, perhaps. But as soon as you start to repeat that action over and over again, the grass starts to separate. Over time, you have a small little pathway. Over time, you've got that highway. And that's ultimately what we want to be doing. So the first realization is, wow, I can rewire my brain. That means I can get rid of habits that don't suit me, and I can introduce habits that do suit me, support me. And it's all about rewiring the neurons that fire together, wire together, and the action that you repeat grows.
So go back to that illustration that you used, that analogy of the field. So you're walking in a field, you've created one path. Now, what will happen when you change direction? What happens to that old path that you had?
Well, the old path is still there. It can become overgrown, but it is still there. But you are creating a new path. Okay, and that's just how it works. But it's the repetition. It's the repetition. And so to do it, you've got to be quite committed. You've got to be quite motivated, and you've got to just show up and get going with it. And there's a lot to do with self-awareness and being with the self to be motivated enough and aware enough to make the changes. So the path is there, but there's the new path, the new habit way.
By the way, some people still don't know how to use a knife and fork. All right, I just thought I'd share. Okay. Let's talk to some people may feel that they don't have the positivity that's required. How would you advise them to engage on this path?
Yeah, motivation, kind of like the tides. Motivation comes and motivation goes. And we all know what it's like when we're motivated. We're firing. We can do so much. And then for some reason, the motivation just disappears. And you have some people, Eugene, who are more motivated than other people. We can talk about a mindset, a growth mindset, and a fixed mindset. But I'm always going to go back to neuroplasticity that says we can rewire. So let's look at motivation. Let's look at the idea that when we start a new year, we've got this fresh approach. We all have ideas of what we want to achieve in the year. And, the research is unbelievable. So many people, just by the end of the first month, give up on those New Year's resolutions because the motivation that was there kind of fizzles out. So it goes back to what we spoke about just a little time ago. And that is, don't worry about the motivation. Rather break up whatever it is you want to do into small, easy chunks so that you don't need motivation to do it. You can just do it. It's just an action. What you want to do is reward yourself when you do it. And rewarding emotion also helps with rewiring new habits. So you want it to be a small little action that you don't need motivation to do. You just need the commitment to do it. And then you want to reward yourself for doing that. And that starts this rewiring. So motivation, it's great. It comes and it goes. But we're going to overcome the fact that motivation comes and goes by making it easy to do something, celebrating, and that then helps with that rewiring.
That's Stephen Fogg's book, Tiny Habits, that shows how those things. In fact, the one that I remember, and by the way, that's one of our manuals that the staff should read over here, is I think it's the mere concept, just getting out of bed, putting your feet on the ground, it's going to be a great day. It sounds so simple. And then as he progresses through that book, I really thought it was phenomenal. Anybody wants to read that book? It's a really great read. But the principles of what you're sharing with us, you've built your business on. So give us a brief insight as to the journey that you took that got you here.
Yeah, thanks, Eugene. For me, it became a journey about what I was thinking and believing. So going through a difficult time in my life, actually, personal and professional losses over time, I found myself in this really unmotivated negative space. So the motivation would last for a short period of time, and then the thoughts about my life and everything happening would just override that. And I found myself back in that pit, felt like the pit. And one day I was driving with my son. We were on our way to football practice, and someone drove through a red light and careened into us and hit us really hard, T-boned us. I was very lucky. In the last second, I quickly moved the steering wheel, which meant, and you would know all about this, which meant that instead of driving right into my door, he hit the front of the car and we went spinning out of control into a traffic light. But what I remember after the shock and the horror coming home, I remember my mind started to do what the mind does. We started to play out all these negative scenarios, the what if and the negativity bias that we have, right? But then for a moment, I thought like, what if I was burying my son the next day? And I remember that feeling of incredible gratitude and deep appreciation for my life. So the feeling and the appreciation and the gratitude that I hadn't experienced that morning, I was experiencing that evening. And that I found very curious because I thought, listen, my life is still exactly the same. My reality hasn't changed, but the way I'm experiencing my reality has changed. And that became a journey. Reality, thoughts, feelings, how we show up, a belief system, a rewiring, mindfulness, and then using breath work to help with that rewiring and managing of the nervous system. So it's been a 10-year journey. Yep. It's been quite a phenomenal journey, and it goes all the way back to that first question that you asked about those blocks that we have and those belief systems that we have, and finding a way to repattern, rewire, and clear the mind of those thoughts that are creating that experience. And so that's my aim, and that's my focus, and that's my passion.
Well, but before I come to the final question or final observations from you, Fogg's, it's the BAT model, BMAT model, behavior is changed by motivation, ability, and a trigger. And I found that so interesting. And when I look at what you've shared, there's the journey that you've taken to a great extent. And we endeavor to incorporate this in our training methodology because there's got to be a motivation to do something. And I'm glad you focused on the gratitude. And that's an attitude that we should have, an attitude of gratitude. So finally, why do you think it's important that the persons in attendance at our Women with Drive, and this is the 9th year we're running it and we are oversubscribed, why do you think a subject such as this is so important to be shared with our women participants?
You know, Eugene, because it's not just something that we use in our professional space. It's not just something that we can go and at work succeed and thrive. We use it from the moment, as you said, the moment we wake up in the morning, how we interact with those around us that we love, how we interact with the world, other human beings, the greater community, how we show up as a human being. It moves into every aspect of our lives. So something like this, really looking at the mind, how the mind works, being able to rewire, to feel gratitude, to express gratitude, how that affects the hormonal changes in the body. This impacts, honestly, how we are as wives, how we are as partners, how we are as mothers, sisters, friends, and how we benefit and the input within our community and making this world a better place. It's as vital as our oxygen is. It's vital.
Niki, those are really somber thoughts. And I know that anybody who's viewing this is going to only get a bit an inkling of what our Women with Drive event is going to be. So we look forward to sharing the platform with you. As you know, it's on the 12th. We will welcome you in person. But as we've shared before, this is going to be a hybrid event. So our audience out there, and we communicate with about 25,000 people every week, I'm sure that some of your words of wisdom will be shared with them. So Niki, say thank you very much for joining us. And we will see you on the 12th of August. Thanks for joining us, Niki.
Looking forward. Thank you so much.
Take care. So that brings us to a conclusion of Drive Chat number 36. This is done with a view to encouraging those who will be sharing the platform with us as part of our celebration for Women's Month. And we trust that those who will have an in-person invite will look forward to meeting Niki. But for those who will be attending the hybrid version, I'm sure that you would benefit from this greatly. With that, till we see you again, thank you for joining us.